I thought my biggest worry this week would be passing my final accounting exam. I didn't expect to come home and find my father holding my suitcase, already packed, and telling me I was dead weight. My name's Jordan. I'm 22, a senior in college, and I've been living with my dad since I was 12. My mom passed away from cancer when I was in middle school, and from that moment on it was just the two of us, me and Dad, Team Langston. Or at least that's what I thought. We always got by. Dad wasn't overly affectionate, but he was consistent, made sure I had clean clothes, decent food, a working laptop, and a ride when I needed one. He showed up at my track meets even if he stood in the back. When I got accepted into the state university 2 hours away, he didn't flinch. "Commute and save your money," he said. "You'll thank me later." And I did. I've spent the last 4 years commuting back and forth, working a part-time job at the grocery store on weekends, and studying at every red light and lunch break. It's been hard, sure, but I figured it was worth it. Living at home gave me a safety net. Or so I believed. Until 3 days ago. I got home late from a group project, tossed my keys in the dish by the door, and noticed something off quiet. Like too quiet. Dad's usually watching reruns or ranting at the TV about politics. But this time, nothing. Just the low hum of the fridge. He was standing in the living room with his arms crossed. My actual suitcase was sitting on the floor next to the front door. My backpack was zipped and leaning against it. My shoes were already laced. I laughed at first. "What, am I going on vacation?" He didn't smile. "No. You're moving out." First I thought it was some bizarre joke. Maybe he was trying to teach me some tough lesson about independence. But the way he looked at Meckled, calculated, me stomach dropped. "Are you serious?" "I'm tired, Jordan," he said. "Tired of living like I have a toddler in the house. You're a grown man. It's time you acted like one." I stammered something about finals and not having money for rent yet, but he shut it down. "I gave you 4 years. You graduate next month. I'm not a retirement plan, and I'm done playing roommate to someone who doesn't contribute equally. I want my space. I want to live again." "Live again?" I asked, stunned. "You're dating someone?" And that's when he let it slip. "She doesn't feel comfortable with you here." There it was. Her name's Marie. I've met her twice. Once at a barbecue where she smiled too wide and called me kiddo, and once in the hallway when she came over and immediately closed the door to his room without saying hi. She's in her 40s, a Pilates instructor, and according to Dad, a fresh start. Apparently she'd been over more than I realized. When I was at work, when I was studying at the library, when I was in class. She'd started leaving things behind. A rope. A toothbrush. Wine glasses in the sink that weren't there in the morning. "She says she can't be herself with you around," Dad explained. "She wants to move in." I want that too. I don't know what hit harder, the betrayal or the casual way he said it. Like this wasn't a huge, life-altering decision. Like kicking me out with a week's notice was no big deal. I slept in my car that night. Not because I didn't have other options. My friend Zach offered me his couch. My cousin in the next city said I could crash there till June. But I couldn't do it. I sat there in the parking lot of the community center, watching the steam on my windshield, trying to understand how the man who raised me could just throw me away. The next day I confronted him. "I thought we were family," I said. He didn't even look up from his coffee. "We are. But you're an adult. Adults take care of themselves." I lost it. I shouted. I cried. I begged. I even accused him of choosing some woman he's known for less than a year over the kid he raised. He didn't deny it. "She makes me happy, Jordan. I haven't been happy in a long time." "I get it." "I do." He was lonely. After Mom died, he never dated. He poured himself into work and me. And maybe now that I'm grown, he wants to reclaim some lost time. But did that have to come at my expense? The twist came 2 days later, when my Aunt Cheryl, Dad's older sister, called me. "Jordan," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to come over." I showed up to her house thinking maybe she had a spare room or a job lead. What I didn't expect was for her to hand me an envelope with a copy of a will. My mom's will. It turns out my mom had left a trust fund. Not a huge one, but enough. Enough to cover a year of rent, tuition, maybe even a used car. But Dad never told me. He used part of it to pay off their mortgage after she died, and the rest? Gone. drained before I turned 18. He wasn't supposed to touch it, Aunt Cheryl said. Your mom made it clear it was meant for you when you were older. I felt like the floor disappeared. I had always assumed money was tight, that we were just scraping by. But apparently Dad had used part of my future to finance his own past. I'm not saying he lived lavishly, but I remember new golf clubs. I remember that trip to Phoenix for a business seminar when I was 15. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. It was for the house, he said flatly. To keep us afloat. You should be grateful. Grateful? The man emptied my college trust, kicked me out before finals and wants me to thank him? I told him I'd rather live on the street than take another dime from him. And I meant it. I found a cheap room to rent with Zach and another guy. It's barely big enough to fit a mattress and the Wi-Fi sucks. But I've never felt more clear-headed. And here's the thing, Marie broke up with him a day after she moved in. Apparently, living with someone is different than sneaking around in secret. She didn't like how rigid he was. Said he was emotionally unavailable. Left a note and walked out while he was at work. Poetic justice? Maybe. But all I feel is hollow. Because even though he tried to come crawling back texting me apologies, asking if I want to come over for dinner, I can't unhear those words. I want to live again. Like I was the thing keeping him dead. I'm not writing this because I want revenge. Or sympathy. I want to know if I'm crazy for cutting him off. For walking away from the only parent I have left. So tell me, am I the asshole for going no contact with my dad after he kicked me out to move in his girlfriend, and used up my college trust to do it? I didn't answer any of Dad's texts. The first one came 3 days after Marie left. Then 5 more rolled in, some long-winded, others just 3 words. Come home, please. But I didn't. Not just because I was still angry, because I didn't know what home even meant anymore. Zach's apartment was small, and his other roommate, Cam, was a bit of a slob. But they gave me space, and more importantly, they gave me dignity. I slept on an old futon, studied on a milk crate desk, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like I had to walk on eggshells. That's when Aunt Cheryl called again. There's something else, she said. Something your mom left behind for you. She asked me to give it to you when you were ready. I took the bus to her house. The whole ride my thoughts swirled with bitterness, dread, and something else, hope. When I arrived, she led me to her attic. There, covered in a clean white sheet, was a cedar chest. Inside were photos: Mom with me at the zoo, Mom holding me as a baby, and one I'd never seen before. Her pregnant, sitting next to a man I didn't recognize. My heart thumped strangely. Cheryl watched my face. That was her friend Julian. Friend. More than that, she said softly. Before your dad. Before any of this. She handed me a sealed letter. My name in Mom's handwriting curled across the front. My fingers trembled opening it. My sweet Jordan. If you're reading this, it means you're grown. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe you're angry or lost. I'm so sorry I'm not there to guide you. But I want to leave behind something more than money. I want to tell you the truth. I loved your father. But we weren't always happy. Before him, I was with someone else, Julian. You were almost his. I don't mean biologically, I mean emotionally. He wanted to be your dad. He would have been a good one, I think. But life didn't work out that way. Your father stepped up when Julian left. He married me and promised to care for us both. He did, in his way. But I always worried didn't love you the way Julian would have. He saw you as a duty. I hope that would change. I hope it did. If you ever feel unloved or disposable, please know it is not because of you. You are brilliant and kind and more like me than you realize. I left this with Cheryl because I feared your father might twist the truth. But you deserve it. Don't let him or anyone decide your worth. Love always. Mom. I sat on the attic floor for a long time after that, clutching the letter, staring into a corner full of dust and shadows. I wasn't angry anymore. I was hollow. Like a cord had been cut inside me, and I was slowly floating away from everything I ever believed about my childhood. He didn't love me the way I thought he did. Maybe he never did. The pieces began to fall into place: the emotional distance, the casualness with which he kicked me out, the way he spoke about me as a burden. It all made sense now in the most heartbreaking way possible. He raised me out of obligation. But what came next, I didn't see it coming. A week later, Cheryl called again, this time with a tremble in her voice. Your father, he collapsed at work. He'd had a mild heart attack. Stress-induced, the doctors said. He was stable, recovering. Cheryl didn't tell him I'd been informed. She left it up to me. I didn't know what to do. The part of me that still remembered our trips to the batting cages, or the way he sat beside me when I broke my arm in 7th grade, that part ached. But another part of meth part that slept in a car 2 weeks ago, and had no trust fund and no home, wanted to walk away forever. In the end I went. He was lying in a white hospital bed, pale and thin, tubes in his arms. For the first time he looked small to me. Not strong. Not in control. Just a man. He didn't speak at first. He looked surprised. Then guilty. I didn't think you'd come. Neither did I said. There was a long silence. He opened his mouth, then closed it. When he finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. I messed up, Jordan. I thought pushing you out would make me feel free. But I just feel empty. Marie's gone. The house is quiet. And now, he gestured weakly at the hospital room. You almost died, I said. And I almost didn't care. He winced. I deserve that, he whispered. We sat in silence again. And then he said the one thing I'd never heard from him before. I'm sorry. I stared at him. Not because of the words, but because I believed them. Maybe it was the heart monitor, the shadows under his eyes, or maybe it was the first time he looked at me like a person, not a burden. I'm sorry I used your trust, he said. I thought it was mine to use. I was wrong. I'm sorry I kicked you out. I thought you'd land on your feet. But I was wrong again. I was selfish. I was scared. Scared of what? I asked. Of being old. Of being alone. Of never getting to live a different life. And I was the weight holding you down. He nodded slowly. I didn't see it that way until now. But yeah, that's how I made you feel. We talked. Really talked. For 2 hours. About Mom. About the trust. About Julian. I told him about the letter. He didn't deny it. He said he always felt like he was second in her heart and resented me for being her first. It was ugly. But it was honest. And something cracked open between us. I didn't forgive him right away. I still haven't. But I told him I'd consider seeing him after he got out. Not to move back in. Just to talk. That night I reread Mom's letter. She was right. I am more like her than I knew. Not just in the way I look or the way I write essays, but in the way I choose truth over comfort. I've started therapy free through campus once a week. I'm working more hours now that finals are over, saving up for my own apartment. I even started writing a blog about rebuilding from nothing. The first post? How it feels when your dad says you're dead weight. It got shared over 4,000 times. Apparently, I'm not the only one whose parent confused parenting with sacrifice and forgot to love in the process. I'm not sure where my relationship with Dad goes from here, but I know where mine with myself is going. Because I've learned something valuable in the wreckage. Sometimes losing everything is what makes space for the life you were always meant to build. 2 weeks after Dad was discharged from the hospital, I got a message that stopped me cold. It wasn't from him. It wasn't from Cheryl. It was from a name I'd never seen before, Julian Carver. Subject line. Your mother would want us to meet. It hit me like a slap. I clicked the email open, heart thumping. Jordan, I don't know how else to start this. I've rewritten this message a dozen times. Your mother, Elena, and I were very close before she met your father. I wasn't around when she passed. I didn't know she was sick. But I recently got in contact with your Aunt Cheryl. She told me about what happened, your dad, the trust, the letter. She also said you might be open to meeting. If that's true, I'd like to buy you lunch. I have no expectations. Just a conversation. I think you deserve the truth. Julian. I stared at the screen, stunned. Cheryl never said she'd reached out to Heimer, that he was even still around. A few deep breaths later, I texted her. Why didn't you tell me? Her response came fast. I wanted to let you settle. I wasn't sure if you'd want more family right now. Family. The word hung heavy. I didn't even know if family applied. Julian wasn't my biological father. But according to Mom, he wanted to be. I called him the next morning. His voice was calm. Measured. Not warm like Dad's had once been. but steady like someone who'd been waiting for a moment like this. We met at a quiet cafe just outside the city. He stood when I walked in, tall, gray hair pulled into a neat ponytail, wearing a denim jacket and dark jeans. He looked like an artist, or a guy who used to be one. "Jordan," he said with a soft smile. "You look like her." I sat down across from him. "So I've heard." There was no awkward small talk. No shallow compliments or forced questions. Julian dove right in. "I loved your mother. More than anything. We were together for almost 5 years. Then life got complicated. I got a job offer in London and I took it. She didn't want to move. We split. I thought we'd find our way back to each other." I watched him carefully. "But she met my dad." He nodded. "Yeah. I didn't find out until later. She stopped writing. I thought she'd moved on." He took a breath. "When Cheryl told me everything recently, I realized just how much I missed. She said you wanted to be my dad." "I did," he said. "When she got pregnant, I hoped it was mine. But the math didn't add up. Still, I wanted to be there. To help raise you. Even after we broke up." I felt something stir in my chest, a strange, aching warmth mixed with grief. "You didn't fight for her?" "I was stupid," he admitted. "Proud. I thought if I left, she'd come after me. But Elena was stronger than that. She had her own path." I nodded slowly. We talked for over an hour about her music, the poetry she wrote, the way she used to hum when cooking. He remembered details no one else did. It was like breathing life back into a woman I only remembered in pieces. Then he said something that changed everything. "I have something else. She sent it to me years ago. I didn't open it for a long time. But I think you should have it now." He reached into his satchel and handed me a padded envelope. On the front, "Julian, if anything ever happens to me, give this to Jordan someday." Inside was a small notebook, handwritten, spiral-bound. The cover read, "Letters to Jordan." I blinked. "You never opened it?" "I couldn't," he said. "It wasn't mine." Hands trembling, I flipped it open right there. October 12. "You're 2 today. You threw applesauce at the wall and laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I didn't even get mad. Your laugh healed something in me I didn't know was broken." I flipped again. April 3rd. "You asked me why the moon follows us in the car. I said it just likes our company. You told me, 'Good, because I don't want it to get lonely.'" My heart melted. Page after page, memories, jokes, sadness. There was one entry where she wrote about crying in the laundry room because she missed Julian and felt invisible in her marriage. Another where she admitted she feared your father didn't know how to love softly. It was like a map. A story no one had ever told me. I clutched the notebook like it was oxygen. Julian looked away, giving me privacy without even having to be asked. When I finally looked up, my voice cracked. "Why now? Why come back into my life?" He folded his hands. "Because I think you need someone. Not a replacement dad. Not a rescuer. Just someone who knew her. Who sees you." And the truth was I did. So we started meeting. Once a week. Then more. He told me about his failed marriage, his art studio in Seattle, and how he still kept a framed picture of my mom above his fireplace. He never pushed for closeness, never asked for anything in return. He just showed up. The contrast between him and my actual father was painful. Meanwhile, Dad kept texting. I didn't block him, but I didn't answer. Sometimes I'd read them, short, awkward attempts at apology. Sometimes a photo of our old dog. Once he sent a video of a sunset and just wrote, "Thought of you." It wasn't enough. But it wasn't nothing. Then graduation came. I didn't invite either of them. I didn't want the distraction, the pressure, the weight. I walked across the stage, took my diploma, and smiled at no one in the crowd. But as I walked out of the auditorium, I saw them both standing apart. Julian stood near the fountain, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Dad was across the lot, hands in his jacket, watching but not approaching. I went to Julian first. He hugged me and whispered, "She'd be proud." Then I turned. I didn't owe my dad anything, but I owed myself the closure. I walked up to him. He looked shocked. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. I shrugged. "You said that last time." He smiled sadly. "I read your blog," he said. "Every post. I stared at him. I didn't know you could write like that. There was a long pause. I swallowed hard. You made a lot of mistakes. I know. You hurt me. I know. I looked back toward Julian, then at my dad. You don't get to be my parent again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But you get to be someone who tries. That's all I can offer. He nodded. I'll take that. We stood there, not hugging, not smiling, just two people in a broken orbit trying to understand if gravity still worked. Later that night, I opened Mom's notebook again. One final entry at the back caught my eye. If you ever feel like you have no home, Jordan, make one. Fill it with truth. Fill it with love. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you're hard to love. So that's what I'm doing now. I've started tutoring writing for younger kids. I'm saving up for grad school. Julian offered to help with tuition, but I said no for now. I want to earn this new life on my own terms. And my dad? He's learning how to cook for one. Sometimes he sends me photos of a new meal. Once he burned rice and texted me. Turns out parenting wasn't the hard part. Cooking was. It made me laugh. Just a little. We're not fixed. But we're trying. And me? I'm building a home from scratch, no chains, no borrowed love, no lies. Just bricks made of truth, pain, growth, and the belief that I deserve better than being someone's burden. I'm not anyone's deadweight. I'm my mother's son. Summer faded into early fall. Life began to stitch itself back together in ways I hadn't expected. I was still in touch with Julian. We'd meet at a small park near his apartment every other week. He respected my space, never tried to step into a father role. But I found myself relying on him for something I'd never quite had. Emotional steadiness. He listened. He remembered things I said. And when I told him I'd gotten accepted into a graduate writing program on partial scholarship, he brought me a journal and said, "Time to start your next book." My actual dad, Tom, kept his distance physically at least. He still sent messages every week. Sometimes just a photo, a recipe, or a dumb pun I would have groaned at 5 years ago. I ignored most of them. But then came the letter. Not a text. Not an email. A letter, written by hand, postmarked from a tiny coastal town about 3 hours from the city. The return address said, Thomas Langston, the Dunes Assisted Recovery Center. Assisted recovery? I opened it, expecting some guilt-laced plea or another attempt to play victim. Instead, I found something different. Jordan, I know I said sorry before, but I don't think you ever believed me. And honestly, I don't blame you. I started therapy. At first, just because the hospital recommended it after the heart scare. But it became more than that. I've been going every week for 3 months now. My therapist asked me what my first memory of being responsible was. I said, the day I found out my dad had walked out on us and my mom was pregnant again. I was 9. I never really stopped being 9. I know that doesn't excuse how I treated you or what I did with your trust, or how I made you feel like a burden. But it's the only way I know how to start telling you the truth. I didn't know how to love without control. I was scared of being irrelevant. And I took that fear out on you. I'm trying to become someone who doesn't have to win love through fear or guilt. Someone who deserves to be in your life if you'll let him. I'll be here once a month for 6 months. Then they evaluate us. I won't ask you to come. But if you do, I'll be waiting by the garden benches on the south end. Love, Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I cried. Not because it fixed anything, but because for the first time since all this started, he didn't make himself the center. He didn't play victim. He admitted what I'd always needed him to admit, that his fear of failure had poisoned everything. I didn't go right away, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. One crisp October morning, I found myself driving the 3 hours to the dunes. It was a modest facility by the sea, with pine trees lining the entrance and salt in the breeze. I parked, walked past the fountain, and turned toward the south benches. There he was, reading a paperback, legs crossed, wearing a fleece jacket I remembered from family hikes when I was 10. He looked up and didn't smile. Not because he wasn't happy to see me, but because he didn't want to spook me. Like he was afraid if he did anything too fatherly, I'd vanish. Hey, he said. I nodded. Hey. I sat beside him. We didn't talk for a long time. Just listened to the ocean crashing beyond the dunes. He finally broke the silence. I wanted to tell you something about your mom. I didn't know if I ever would. But you deserve to know the full story. I braced myself. Before she died, we had one final fight. It was about you. I wanted to send you to boarding school. Somewhere strict. Somewhere that would straighten you out. You just started skipping meals and refusing to talk after practice, and I didn't know how to reach you. I remembered that time. Vaguely. Just darkness. Silence. She told me he's grieving. Not broken. And I told her she was coddling you. She said I was trying to turn you into a soldier, not a son. I left the room that night so furious, I almost slept in the car. But then I heard her singing in the kitchen. The same lullaby she used to hum when you were little. And I stood outside the door and cried like a coward. I stared at him. She always knew who you were, Jordan. Even when I didn't. I was jealous of that. It made me cruel. He turned to me with tears in his eyes. And the worst part? I didn't even realize how much like her you were until she was gone. Until you were gone. I didn't speak. My throat burned. He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a folded photo. It was me at around 4, asleep on Mom's chest, both of us under a blanket. Her eyes were closed, but her arms were wrapped tightly around me like she'd never let go. I found it last month in an old box. I stared at it. She saved us both, you know, he said. I just didn't realize I was worth saving. He looked at me with a broken kind of hope. I'm not asking for a second chance. Just maybe the start of something different. I put the photo in my pocket. Then I said the first thing that came to my heart. I don't hate you anymore. His shoulders shook. I didn't promise more. I didn't hug him. But I stayed for an hour. We talked about dumb things, the Red Sox grocery store ice cream, how bad he was at cooking rice. Then I left. And I didn't feel like a traitor to my pain. I felt human. It's been 6 months. I finished my first semester of grad school. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with a cheap balcony and a stubborn cat named Elliot. Julian visits twice a month. He brought me a second journal and said, "You're not just writing about your past anymore. You're writing your future." And Dad? We meet once a month. Sometimes coffee, sometimes just a walk. He's not trying to be my father again. And I'm not trying to be his kid. But we're something. Maybe something new. Last week, he showed up to a reading I did at the campus library. He sat in the back quiet, didn't come up afterward. But later I got a text. "You have her voice." I finally heard it. I'm proud. This time I believed him. And for the first time in years I didn't feel like someone's burden. I felt like someone worth holding on to. ITA for cutting my dad out of my life after he kicked me out, used up my trust fund and said he was chained to me? No. But maybe I'm not the same person who asked that question anymore. Because healing didn't come from revenge. It came from choosing my own story, one built on honesty, grief, growth, and the quiet hope that broken things can still hold light. Even a father. Even a son. Even me.